Thank you so much for coming back today, too. When I was about 8 years old, someone bought me this piece of music, which is the Super Mario Brothers main theme for easy piano. And it says on it, Title Theme Part 1. And what that means is it's just the overworld music. It's just the ground music. It's not the underwater music or the underground music or anything like that. And I took it into my piano lesson so excited. My parents tell me I had played video game music at the piano since birth, basically. But this was the first piece I had printed, so I took it into my piano lessons, and I was expecting to play something like this that I had heard my whole life growing up. And instead, and I have to put this up because I still have trouble to get it right, this is printed. Which I suppose that the publisher or arranger thought was an easier way to simplify the rhythm, but it's just kind of complex in a different way. So this got me thinking about how I could play video game music on the piano, and my love of doing that continued. In fact, I can remember being a student here down in the practice room hallways this way, and one of my friends said to me, "You always know where Matt Thompson's practicing because you hear Beethoven, Brahms, Chopin, Bach, Schumann, Super Mario. Oh, there's where Matt is." So anyway, about a year and a half ago, I went to see a concert right here this is a Rackham Auditorium we have on Central Campus, gorgeous space. And it was a New World, intimate music from Final Fantasy. This is like a chamber sort of concert. They don't have the big projections and that sort of stuff that Video Games Live does. And as part of this concert, Benjamin Nuss, a pianist, played numerous pieces from the Final Fantasy VII piano collections. I had played those pieces myself for years, and even in some informal performances. But this guy was up in front of 1,000 people playing to cheers and thunderous applause, and I thought, okay, there's something here. This is a potential to have an audience and a following. So after I saw that concert, I started to collect as many of these piano transcriptions as I possibly could. I already had some in my personal collection from my background, but I also got many through interlibrary loan. I even had friends once I started working on this project who said, "Hey, I got these when I was living in the Philippines," or something like that. And at the time I made this slide, I had about 31. And now I have maybe about 36, I would say, and I have about 19 more on the way, actually. The oldest is from, I wanted to do something, the history of these, but let me tell you that's so problematic. The oldest one is actually, that I have, is this one right here. And if you think about this, the Super Mario Brothers overworld theme I just played for you is not actually in Super Mario 3, which by the raccoon tail we can tell that this is Super Mario 3, right? So when you start looking at these and trying to figure out what date they are, right here on the cover by the 3 guy, it says copyright 1990. You open it up, it says copyright 1983, which is the release date of the Japanese version of the game. So to find dates and establish an exact history has been very problematic. The newest one I have up here is the Dragon Quest official best album that's sort of covered up in the upper left there, and that's from 2016. If you're purchasing these in America or looking at them in America, Hal Leonard and Alfred are likely to be the publishers. If you're talking about Japanese versions, they're likely to be KMP Publishing, Do-Re-Mi Publishing, or Yamaha. And before I launch into what's in these, I want to explain a couple things I'm excluding. So on the left here, I have a piano solo by Joyce Russell and Wesley Schaum. This is just inspired by video game music. It's not actually in a video game. And actually at the end, this piece is from 1983. At the end of it, there's a little asterisk and it says, "Many sounds in this piece are purposefully dissonant to resemble the strange sound effects heard while playing video and electronic games." So I've taken out pieces like that are just inspired. The other thing I've taken out, this is Masashi Hamauzu, the composer, for instance, for Final Fantasy XIII. This is his first piece of classical music that I'm aware of, which is a 3-movement piano piece with actually a 4th part that could be added. And it's from 2011. Actually, it was premiered by Benjamin Nuss, the same pianist I heard play in the concert I saw. And then within piano collections that are in video games, there are things like in the Journey collection, there's a piece, I Was Born for This, which is a song in 6 different languages. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the piano pieces. So within them, I wanted to look today at musical variety. What does it mean when it says piano collection? What does it mean when it says intermediate advanced? What does it mean when it says jazzy? The other thing I want to think about is, so we have game audio, which is nonlinear in nature, right? But when I start playing the Super Mario Brothers theme, I don't want to be trapped here forever because it loops. So how are we going to end these pieces? How are we going to make them work in a performance? What is all this Japanese? Many of these, most of these seem to be published from Japan. What is all the Japanese marks? I don't read Japanese. Thankfully, I have a translator who does. And my personal quintessential question with game audio is, can I use this as a teaching tool? Is there something interesting here pedagogically? So let's look at some examples. This is from the Legend of Zelda, easy piano at the top, and at the bottom it is the Legend of Zelda Intermediate Advanced. And this is the title screen music. So let's just look at it for a second before I play it for you. The top example you can see, for instance, the first measure is just half the line. We're in eighths and triplet. And the first measure of the second one, which is much more true to the original game audio, has 16th note quintuplets and is much more filled out. At A, the tempo at the top is 88. Down here, this is also correct to the original audio, 106. You can see also the left hand, instead of having octaves, is just a single note, and the rhythm is also simplified. And you can see in the right hand, instead of having continual fourths, that you only have maybe a fourth thrown in here and there, but otherwise a single line. And this is the sort of, these are the sort, oh, also the key has changed. Did you notice that too? So instead of having one sharp, we have 4 flats. So this is a kind of a typical change you might see in these pieces. So the easy piano version, which makes a nice warm-up. Versus the intermediate advanced, which is much more true to the original audio. And one of the things, those triplets in the left hand, for me, are quite technically difficult. The more true to the original game audio these get, the more almost unplayable they become and unpianistic in a way. And here's the original audio so you can hear that too. I think part of the reason I'm interested in this conversation today is I've spent a lot of my life as an opera pianist, and we have the same problem of something that's not written for the instrument being transferred over to the instrument. And I hear that and I immediately think, how could I get that percussion sound in there? Because this beast dies away as soon as you play a tone, and that file you just heard is able to crescendo. We can have things that are jazzy arrangements. So some things are not even trying to be faithful to the original in a way, in the arrangement. This is Super Mario Intermediate Advanced Jazzy. I'm personally quite excited for when the Odyssey piano transcriptions come out. I'm certain the new Dank Cafe music, they intended to go into a piano transcription, if you've heard that. Those ones are published in America. Let's look at some that are published in Japan. So in Japan, instead of easy, I mean, you can still have easy and intermediate, that sort of stuff, but you're more likely to see original soundtrack or original sound version, which is pretty faithful to the files that are in the game. So for instance, whereas this left-hand part would work really well in a game synthesizer, it's not going to work so well on the piano because of the decay. Then you have piano collections. And these are, it's also quite faithful to the original theme, but it's got moving passages that sound very pianistic and sort of fill out and take advantage of what the instrument does well. And also, they'll have, a repeat of the loop, and then some other fantasy music, and then a repeated loop, maybe more heroic or up here, high and dulcimer or something like that, dulcet tones. So let me play these two for you so you can hear this example. So this is from the original sound version. And this is the Piano Collections version. It's really beautiful. It works really well on the piano. Thank you. So another question, the second question I posed to you, how are we going to end these pieces? Some pieces, like the title screen music to Kingdom Hearts, that's a 2-minute theme and variations, right? It winds to a halt when you sit on the title screen, it replays. No problem, that works real well in a concert. How else are we going to have the loop be handled? Well, many of them, particularly the ones that are very true to the original game sounds, just have a repeat sign and a fade out at the end. So that leaves something for the performer to decide how they're going to handle. Other pieces like the piano collections pieces I was just talking about, those bits of fantasy that they have that connect the different iterations of the loops are often used to sort of wind the piece to a halt at the end of it. They make a musical piece out of that. Other pieces, and this is something you can see pianists like Martin Leung do who are playing these in concerts, they'll use different pieces from the game that make sense in the narrative to add an ending to the piece. So here is the Super Mario Suite from the game music piano solo. This is easy piano. This isn't too easy, but anyway. So you'll hear the Mario theme in, and then as if you've grabbed the flag, and then the victory music. That kind of thing can make a convincing ending to a piece too, right? I also wanted to take a second to point out some of the gorgeous album artwork in these. We've already been looking at many of the covers. My God, that Kingdom Hearts cover is beautiful. There's even in the Kingdom Hearts book a 4-movement sonata. How about that? Over on the right-hand side, this is, not all the artwork is in color, but this comes from Legend of Zelda Symphony of the Goddesses. I mean, just to flip through the pages and see this artwork is incredible. And I also wanted to take a second and show you what a whole page looks like. So I'm about to turn my attention to all this Japanese stuff on it, but the thing in the upper left, hold on, about the thought. Then we have the title of piece, a screenshot from the game play, some performance instructions, which we're going to talk about, and then this whole piece is just one chord, actually. But why do I have to find middle C position every time I'm learning to play the piano? I could find some weird chord like that, that's good. There are also things that I think would be musicological orgasms in these pieces, okay? This is Koichi Sugiyama's own hand writing out the overworld theme to Dragon Quest. I mean, that's pretty cool to see and hear. Now, I was talking about how difficult it is to know the history of these. Well, at the beginning of this, Sugiyama writes a note that says, "There have been many Dragon Quest collections written for piano, but I believe that this KMP series arranged by Yasushi Imamura is the definitive version." Well, this is the only version I can find. So it's interesting. At the beginning of the works, there's often a note from the composer, and this is, I have to take a second now and thank so much recent alum, graduate Dr. Alex Hayashi for doing this translation work for me. He's actually flying back from Japan in the air right now, and I said, I have a budget, could you go to the store and buy some of these? And he wrote me, I bought 19. So that's 19 that I don't have that are about to arrive for me. This is from Kingdom Hearts. I love this. I want to read this to you all. This is from Yoko Shimomura, and she says here, "White and black keys, black symbols written on white paper. Beginning is monochrome. From there, the music brings color. You are the one who will bring that color to the music." I think an incredible reminder of the importance of the performer. But it's not just at the beginning of the works, they're also, like we were seeing, at the beginning of pieces. So this is a Song of Healing from Majora's Mask. And this says right here, this is the same motive as the clock tower, but please play this pianistically. In other words, do not be so square. Use slight push and pull with the tempo and play the melody singingly. Please use the pedal at C to smoothly play the wide arpeggio in the left hand. So they're giving me indications of how to pedal. They're asking me sort of a Russian school of piano to play with a singing sound. And they're also reminding me to use rubato and make it sound human. Some other of these things which Alex has translated as performance tips. If all the notes are difficult to play in the left hand, you may choose to leave out the middle notes. So ideas about simplification. Please bring out the sense of urgency as if being chased. Most of the comments, many of the comments are reminders to connect the game narrative and what's happening there with the music that you're playing. The piece you will hear most in the Final Fantasy VII game, this is the battle music. You have probably heard this hundreds of times. You can visit the old man's house to find out how many times exactly. This is an insider tip, kind of like a Pac-Man Fever lyrics or something. So this is saying you can go to this certain location in the game and the person will tell you how many battles you've fought. I love these. Let me show you just a couple more. Play with an organ-like resonance. This is something I'm doing in my doctoral studies as a pianist. How do you make the instrument sound like something else? Or setting a scene. This piece reminds us of a scene in the Spanish countryside. And finally, practice suggestions are one of the main marks you see. To practice, play the staccato notes extremely short in order to grasp the difference from those that are not marked with staccato. I promise I'm wrapping up. Elizabeth, don't get nervous. Ferdinand Beyer. So many, these marks in the upper left, they're a connection between these works and a pianist, Ferdinand Beyer. Now, I had never heard of Ferdinand Beyer, and I have a doctorate in piano. But he's a German pianist and teacher, and his method was taken actually from the US over to Japan in the 1800s, and it was until the last maybe 20 years the way that piano was taught in Japan and Korea both. So I have here, so what this is saying is this is equivalent, Alex translates this as equivalent to Beyer 75. So Chrono Trigger, Peaceful Days here. I think somebody played this yesterday. They find that equivalent to Beyer. So I'm continuing to study through these and see how much I think they're connected, but at least somebody has taken time already and tried to pair up the difficulty. Going forward, what is there? Well, I have just won a grant to allow me to have a small cohort, a small studio of students to study this music with me. How does that affect student outcomes? I mean, imagine if your piano lesson assignment of summer reading was play Chrono Trigger and fall in love with some of the themes so that you can learn them with me on the piano. And I can pay you in tacos and pizza and Amazon gift cards to do it. We need more early materials. I would love to work with maybe one person who's a piano major, like a doctoral student. I think some of the early Atari things, which by nature have tuning problems, as we're going to hear later today, but also are just two-part inventions, basically, short, like a Bach work. I think that would be great to put pedagogically together, but you have to do it wisely so that your teacher's not yelling at you. And finally, I wanted to make this rousing. These should be part of university curricula, but I sort of am of the opinion that if we're not leading, then we're following. And it turns out that in 2011, at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, Jonathan Smith played 3 pieces from the Final Fantasy IX pianos collection as part of the fulfillment and requirements for his Bachelor of Music degree in piano performance. So it has already been done, and I hope to continue that conversation with some of my colleagues. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Matthew. That was really amazing. So we have this fun little cushy microphone box, which we're supposed to pass around for comments. So, and this is so people following along on the live stream can also hear your questions. So why don't we pass this over this way?
With the reminder that there's coffee.
Thank you for the talk. So I have a, whoa, okay. I have a quick question about what is your take on the armies of non-professional arrangers online, the amateurs?
Oh, thank you for asking that, because I didn't get to that in my talk. There are some that I love because they are very well done. Maybe I nitpick with a certain mark or something, but then there are ones that are wrong notes, wrong rhythms, sort of akin to this. I don't love those, but I am aware that there's basically endless music possible once you start Googling around. If you Google my favorite game audio, piano sheet music is probably there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your talk. As someone who's more or less trying to be self-taught with a lot of the books you mentioned up there, I feel like this talk was made directly at me.
Thank you.
It's sort of a related question. With the plethora of YouTube videos you find online, I've noticed that, like, if you go to the comments section, one of the first things you'll find is like, do you have sheet music for this? Can you do it at another angle so I can see your hands? And these videos have become sort of a pedagogical tool themselves. And I was wondering if you could kind of speak on that expectation now.
I would be so glad to. One of the things I said to Alex when he flew to Japan is Pokemon, anything, Final Fantasy 15, and whatever you can find. So I was going to show, before I had to cut for time, a clip from Final Fantasy 15. Square released a video of somebody playing that in like February, and then more around June they released, that was to celebrate the album. More like June they released the music. But February 3rd, I think that they released the person playing. By February 6th, someone had already transcribed it and put it to, a score to the video, and also made a tutorial of here's how to do the triplets against the eighth notes. I think that's fantastic, and the fact that that is so online within minutes of this stuff coming out is telling you that there is a market for this and people want to play this music.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. I have a sort of a related question, which is about copyright. How do you handle, if you want to record these and really follow copyright regulations? I mean, how do you do that? Who do you contact? What's the procedure like? Or do you have any experience with that?
Well, I haven't myself done it, but I can tell you that the more close to modern day you get, I mean, legally, supposedly if somebody's already recorded it, then you can record it, right? But the Alfred ones, they say, I was even nervous to show the slides. It says, you may not show this, broadcast, there's just this huge list of things you must contact them. But the contact information is now inside it. Great. So before, we have our end of studio recital in a year, I plan to contact them and say, hey, we're doing this, and make sure that it's okay.
Cool, great.
Thanks for the wonderful presentation. This
Thank
is
you.
really fascinating as someone who's really interested in pedagogy. I'm curious, have you found guitar or violin transcriptions or other instruments, or is this primarily a piano phenomenon?
Well, that's my interest. I also have a guitar rock band book that goes through tab and things like that. I even found World of Warcraft trombone grade 2 and 3. So I guess, I haven't looked super carefully at that, but I guess you're learning to play trombone with piano accompaniment. That's in the book. So, I mean, I only see more of this. And I didn't say this earlier, but I don't know whether it's internet searches make it more easy to find the information, or there's just more being published now, or probably a combination of both. But since the mid-2000s, there's a huge increase in these from what I know.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much for the talk. Yeah, I feel like everyone's saying this, but I've also found it incredibly fascinating as I guess I've been trying to play video game music on pianos for as long as possible, and something that me and my brother have actually both been doing. I was kind of curious about how often do you tend to try to play music based off of official transcriptions versus how much you try to learn and build your own by ear, especially relevant towards a lot of games that might not actually be big enough to afford to have these fancy books full of fancy artwork and everything. So for a lot more smaller indie games. And I was just kind of curious, how often do you find yourself transcribing this music? Do you ever write it down? And if you do write it down, do you ever
Will I sell it
distribute
to
it?
you? Yeah. Well, if you're one of my students, Jonathan, then I'll let you have. But anyway, I'm more likely to do it. For instance, I played Breath of the Wild, and what is it, Kos's theme that you hear repeat, and it's just a short little 8-bar. I mean, that is a perfect transcription assignment for people who get so locked into notes. I had just played the game, and then one day I walked over to the piano and I started playing, and I love that piece. It's perfect. So I'm likely to make my own arrangement if it is something old that I've played forever, or if it's something new that it's not yet published. Those are the times I'm messing around with it.
This is great, and because it's great to hear that I didn't know people were like interested.
You showed us a piece of Halo or a piece of piano music you'd made yesterday, I thought about.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's I've had a few people ask about some of the piano stuff that I've done. So just to give you a little inside information how some of this happens, I don't think the publishers, they don't see this as a place to make money. So once again, as a business thing, they don't care. Hal Leonard is the only one who ever contacted me. They did the Halo 3, whatever it is, final effort or something. And my only involvement with that was to do some editing when the guy sent it to me. And it was sort of an arrangement that I thought, well, that's actually not what I would have done, but, and correct these inner voices a little bit. And, it was nice and it was kind of cool. It seemed like there were some places that seemed really difficult. And that's the only one that ever, and you had it up on the thing, so I was glad to see that. But it's interesting. It seems like the Japanese music publishers are much more on the ball than anybody in the States. And there's a lot of great music and a lot of great piano music. I know that Gary Scheinman has a piano piece that's just super cool. And I don't know, is that something that's out there someplace? Somebody published
I haven't
that?
seen Gary. I don't know about Gary's. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I hope somebody needs to push Hal Leonard or some of these other places. But for example, when I go back to Microsoft, because they own the Halo IP, they're just not interested in doing anything with that. They're like, moving forward, we're just making new stuff. So I'm like, hey, I'll take care of it. Let me work and do a bunch of music that people would like, and they're just not interested in giving us permission to do that. It seems really sort of strange, but if you guys push for it, maybe we can get some stuff to happen.
Well, I'm super interested to know sort of how the composer has a dialogue back and forth with the publishers about this. And in fact, I'm hoping for a trip to Japan in 2020 to meet with some of these people and talk with them about how they're arranging and what they're thinking and how are they collaborating with these others.
Yeah. I mean, to see those personal notes from the Japanese composers, I'm like, wow, they're treated so much better.
One more question, and maybe Jesse, if you want to come set up while we're doing one more question. So go ahead.
So what do you think it will take for students currently in school, professors, students no longer, graduates like myself, to help change kind of the dynamic, getting piano sheet music or other instrument music into the curriculum at universities?
When I first attended this conference 5 years ago, I went in and I was so excited. I'm like, I want to have this here at Michigan. And one of the deans at the time said, ludomusicology sounds like pseudo-musicology to me. So there's a lot of attitude that has to be changed. And I think that we're the people doing it. So I don't know what to say other than we got to continue the dialogue that's going on now. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.